I just wanted to give a quick overview of the new NVX XAD15. It is their 5,000 watt amplifier. So I just got this in the mail, got some copper lugs so I can do my zero gauge. Later this week I'll have sky-high car audio dual zero gauge inputs for this, so it'll have plenty of current. And I also have an excess power battery in the trunk already, so short runs, dual zero gauge, should be very happy on power. So we open the box, we've got the owner's manual, and you see the XAD15, 1850 at 4, 3300 at 2, 5000 at 1. Now, other things to note: has a low pass filter, has a subsonic filter, has bass boost, which I really despise. I don't like bass boost. I think it's bad for the amp, bad for the subs. If you have a good system, you don't need it. So, I'm not sure why they put it on there, but whatever, it's there. Comes with a cheap bass knob. It is made of plastic, weighs almost nothing. The potentiometer feels good, nice and smooth. It's got a little power light on there. Pretty standard, you know, mounted to the bottom of your dash. Got your cable for it, got your Allen keys and some screws. Onto the amp. The measurements, if you go and look here at the mounting holes. So from center to center on these holes, it is 7 1/4. Overall is 9 inches. This way, center to center is 11. From the outside of the tab to the outside of the tab is 11 1/2, and then to here is 12. So from here to the outside of the tab and the speaker terminal. So it's really 12 inches by 9 inches and 2.5 inches thick. Much bigger than the JAD 1200.1 that I'm upgrading from. Now, the JAD series are some great amps. However, entirely my fault, I burned this one out. So if you look, you can see this is a different color from this. So this got a little warm, and it got warm enough that it changed the color of the metal casing. And so what happened was, now for starters, make sure you set your gains correctly. Buy an oscilloscope. That's what I recommend. You can get a decent one for about $90 on Amazon. I'll put the link in the description for the one that I bought. You can see the waveform, see if it's clipping, and now you adjust your gain, make sure you're not clipping. The gain is not a volume knob. It is to match the sensitivity of the output signal of your source unit. But anyway, if I had an oscilloscope, I would see that at all gain levels, I had clipping. So really bad on the subs, bad for the amp, but the reason it was clipping at all levels is because my source unit going into it, that had bad output. So if I had seen that I had bad output, I could have remedied that, saved the amp, not, I'm sure, done some type of damage to my subs, but the subs are still playing because, well, I was not giving them anywhere near the power that they are rated to, and they're pretty well built. They're the NVX XAD15 version 2. So getting version 3s sometime next year when they come out. Until then, we're going to see how long the version 2s last on a 5,000 watt amp. So some quick notes. The old amp, the JAD series, 8 gauge inputs. I really liked that it had quad outputs on the speaker terminals with 8 gauge leads size. And on this side you had left and right input and output. Pretty standard, no bass boost, and that's about it. On the XAD series, you have single input and output, so you'll have to use a Y connector if you have dual output for your sub channel. If you just have a single sub channel output, then you'll be fine. You have subsonic, low pass, your gain, bass boost, which I don't like. I also don't like it was all the way up right out of the box. So always check your settings before you turn anything on for the first time. They did add a clip light, so I'll test that with my oscilloscope, make sure that's accurate. Single outputs. They are 8 gauge, but only singles. I liked that that had dual. It's very useful. Not sure why this is singles. This could have really used some dual output. I'll have to check if the 13,000 watt XAD15 had single output. I feel like it did though, but I think it should have more. Anyway, on to the other side. You have 0 gauge inputs, no adapters needed, very nice. Larger than 8 gauge remote. So this is great for daisy chaining multiple amps together. You know, you can put, 3 or 4 16 gauge wires very comfortably in here for your remote turn on. And even if you use this as like a distribution point, it'll hold that many wires. It'll be great. You've got your dual fans here, so that'll help keep it cool. Forgot to mention the potentiometers are not click style. On the J80 series, they were click. On this, it is nice and smooth, much easier to set your gains and set the low pass and subsonic. Very easy now that they're not the click style. Much easier to get an accurate adjustment. So the low pass for subs, I like to set my crossover around 80. For subsonic, you take your box tuning, multiply by 0.75. That'll give you half an octave lower than tuning. That's what your subsonic should be set to. In my case, I found that my subs start to unload, mechanically bottom out, start making weird noises around that 0.75 multiplier of my tuning. So it's just, that's for the longevity of your subs. It helps save them. I don't see anywhere in the manual or on the amp or anything about what decibel slope for cutoff those filters are, but you'll just have to play with it and adjust accordingly. Kind of a negative note, this is, I think you can see that, this is a brand new amp. Looks like there was some tape on it, so I got a bunch of adhesive residue, so I'll have to get that off. And even though this was just bought in November of 2022, this is marked as September of 21. This is over a year old, but not everyone's running 5Ks, so it must have been sitting on a shelf. But for fuse rating, no fuse rating in the manual, no onboard fuses. I always recommend taking your wattage, dividing it by 10, and that's your amp rating. So I'm running into an issue where I need a new front battery. So my front and rear batteries are different. So I have an isolator between them so they don't negatively impact each other with resting at different voltages. And so that battery isolator is only rated to 200 amps. So I have to be careful about not pulling too much amperage, and a 5K will pull some serious power, could be around 400 amps. So you have to be careful of that. So I'm going to keep this at 4 ohms for a while. At 4 ohms, it'll do about the same as this amp on 1 ohm. So it'll be plenty. Actually, I take that back. It'll do almost double what this does at 1 ohm. So I'm going to be plenty happy with this. Once I get a new battery, get the isolator out, everything's direct wired between the batteries. 0 gauge for power and ground runs. Then we can turn this up to wire it down to 1 ohm and turn it up just up to clipping. Again, we'll test that clip light with the oscilloscope, see if it's accurate. I reached out to NVX and asked them about the voltage on these, on what they can accept. I have a friend that blew up some amps by putting too high a voltage to them, and I wanted to make sure I didn't do that because this is a decent little investment. And so NVX got back to me the next day very happy with their responses, very technical. I enjoy that, but they told me these should be good up to about 16 volts. So you can run these on lithium. I might go to lithium eventually here, but I have plenty of alternator current. I have a 340 amp alternator, going to have 2 excess power batteries, lots of zero gauge. This will have dual inputs with a battery about 2 feet away from it. So I'm not really worried about going lithium quite yet. It's really not necessary, especially for the power that I'm pushing for the classes that I'm going to enter with sound system competitions. But anyway, as far as power draw, my mids and highs, I'm using a XAD15. I have 2 of them. I have one right over here under my desk in my room for my desk speakers with 4 6.5s and a 15-inch NVX sub. Sounds really good on music, but I'm using that in my car as well, a separate one, and it gives about 80 watts times 4. That comes out to 320 watts, and it's about 30 amps. On the high side, that would, at most, that's going to draw 30 amps, and now I'm limited to around 200, so this thing, according to that, is 1850 at 4 ohms. That comes out to, assuming 60% efficiency, that's the 30 amps, and what I'm about to say is 80% efficiency. It's about 160 amps of current draw. So 30 and 160, you're at 190, perfect, just under the 200 mark. The system should be happy. I should hold my voltage right around 14.8, 14.7. It'll perform great. Anyway, NVX is very underrated. Their amps always do more than advertised. So anyway, very happy with this amp. Great first impressions. Hopefully later this week I'll have a system overview. I'll have this thing wired up and playing. And quick side note, when installing any amp, I always recommend getting everything wired up without the fuses put in. And if you're connecting an amp to power for the first time, use some type of a resistor and charge up the capacitors in the amplifier slowly to slowly bring the voltage up so that you don't shock anything in the system. That way, when you put your fuses in, you should not have any type of sparking, any type of surging. All your electronics will be much happier, and you should be good to go. Have your speakers hooked up, have everything hooked up, use the resistor, get the voltage up, toss your fuses in, and you should be good to go. But so stay tuned for the system overview, and subscribe if you want to see that, and like the video. It'll help me out. I got this amp from NVX.com, and if you use discount code Riley815, you'll get 10% off your order. So great amp, great prices over there at NVX.com, and I will put links in the description for the oscilloscope and for this amp and a few other things in my system in the description. Hope to see you soon on the next video.